Tonight, new safety guidelines for anyone taking public transit.
Anyone traveling on public transit, wear a face covering.
The recommendation coming as the province begins to reopen and more people are expected to hit the streets. Plus,
we're not going to be able to return as fast in Peel region.
Park amenities in Toronto are reopening, but they'll remain closed in Peel region. We'll explain why. And a look at the measures some businesses are taking to keep their customers safe as retailers get back to business. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. If you've been on public transit in the past few weeks, you've no doubt seen many passengers wearing masks. Well, going forward, that is being advised for all riders, part of a stronger push from health officials to encourage mask usage in settings where physical distancing just isn't possible. Lisa Shing has more on that.
As Ontario's economy gradually reopens, more people are heading back to work, which means more riders on public transit. It seems most are wearing masks.
We need to be protected. We don't know that virus.
I think it's a smart thing because if you want to protect yourself and if you're not good with the social distancing.
If they're wearing a mask, then I'll usually get on just because I know they're taking precautions.
Anyone traveling on public transit, wear a face covering.
Today, an official recommendation from the province with an exception.
Face coverings should not be placed on or used by children under the age of 2, anyone who has trouble breathing, and anyone who is unable to remove it without assistance.
The Ontario government says transit agencies should provide sanitizer in the vehicles, barriers between drivers and passengers, and physical distancing measures.
There are going to be some cases where there will be, buses that have 20, 25 people on them, and physical distancing just will not be possible. And that's why the use of face coverings is going to be so important.
If masks are so important, then why not make them mandatory?
There are issues around how would we enforce such a thing. There are social equity issues, the impact on service delivery, the legality. These are a number of things that would need to be considered.
And TTC officials say they take their lead from the province and the city.
I think it's the right thing to do, and when possible, we highly recommend that people wear a mask.
We will continue to monitor the situation and, of course, adapt our advice on an as-needed basis. The science is still evolving.
Now, the union representing 12,000 transit workers in Toronto says it's been pushing for a mandatory mask policy for a while now. All of this as federal officials have come out to strongly recommend people wear masks in locations they can't safely physically distance. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto officials are also recommending you wear a mask when in doubt. And that may include when you're at the parks. The city's parks are sure to be packed this weekend as Toronto opens up a long list of amenities that have been closed since March. Today, the city got started reopening 5 BMX locations, 14 skateboard parks, and 4 disc golf locations. And just in time for the weekend, you'll have access to picnic shelters, basketball courts, baseball diamonds, and more than 300 soccer and multi-use outdoor fields, although team sports are still banned. Many parking lots at parks will also reopen, though waterfront parking lots will remain closed for now, and High Park is still closed to traffic on weekends. Also remaining closed for now, playgrounds, outdoor exercise equipment, swimming pools, and splash pads. Now, those reopenings come as we're actually seeing an uptick in COVID-19 cases since last week. They are certainly seeing that trend in Brampton and Mississauga. Tonight, those cities' mayors say they won't be following Toronto's lead when it comes to reopening parks. Natalie Nanowski has more.
Toronto dog owners are thrilled that off-leash areas are now open, as are skate parks and other outdoor sporting facilities in Toronto. But nearby in Peel region, the cities can't do the same.
As much as the province is giving permission to have a gradual return to normal, we're not going to be able to return as fast in Peel region because we have to put public health first.
While community spread continues to decline in Toronto and across the province, in parts of the GTA, that's not the case.
There is still widespread community transmission. So this virus is still being spread right across particularly Peel, Mississauga, and Brampton.
we have not seen a decline in new cases in line with the province's own framework for reopening. Further, we have had 20% of all the new cases in Ontario in the past week, which is disproportionate to our share of the population.
So while facilities in Brampton and Mississauga will remain closed, the City of Toronto will open more this week, including things like basketball courts. However, you can't come here and play as a team unless you're from the same household. Otherwise, you can come and shoot hoops solo. Just remember to keep your distance.
We know now that the risk of acquiring this infection outdoors is pretty unlikely, especially if physical distancing measures are adhered to. As long as people aren't, touching high contact surfaces like playgrounds and things like that, the risk is extraordinarily low.
Toronto's playgrounds will remain closed, and bylaw officers will be watching all outdoor venues closely to make sure the rules are followed.
Won't hesitate to take whatever steps are necessary if we find that there is any kind of a threat to public health or a threat that we will be going backwards.
And opening up too early only to shut down again is exactly what Peel Region wants to avoid. So it's telling its residents to stay home. And officials will revisit the idea of reopening outdoor facilities next week. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, many clothing stores around Toronto are back in business as part of the province's first phase of reopening. But the shopping experience isn't exactly what it used to be. Retailers are taking extra precautions to keep customers and employees safe. Our Greg Ross went suit shopping today.
Just pinning the pants here from the top of the leg all the way to the bottom.
Suit Supply in Yorkville is still fitting customers for suits since reopening yesterday, but they're taking every precaution to do it safely.
Let's say we want to let out the jacket a little bit. I can get in and have full access to his side seams here.
But retail supervisor Greg Milstein is still separated from the customer, thanks to this new full-body plexiglass shield they've installed.
You're still able to do what you normally do when it comes to measuring, but this keeps you safe.
This gives a little bit of a barrier between the customer and yourself.
In addition to that, they're providing masks for staff and customers. They've set up sanitizing stations and
just high-touch areas.
They're even using ultraviolet light in hopes of sanitizing furniture.
It's supposed to kill bacteria and viruses.
Over on Queen West,
all surfaces have been disinfected before we're opening.
They're making final preparations to reopen tomorrow at women's clothing store The Latest Scoop, where employees will now be expected to wear masks and gloves, and they plan to limit the amount of customers allowed in at one time for safe physical distancing.
We're going to have half of our fitting rooms open, so every other cubicle, and we will be keeping 6 feet away from the customers.
And after a customer tries something on, they have new procedures in place to sanitize clothes.
We'd disinfect the hanger with a disinfectant product, and then with the steamer, we'd get the heat steam, and we'd essentially just go through. And I'd just be doing this on every single garment that the customer has taken into her fitting room but is not purchasing.
Similar precautions are being taken at shops all over the city to keep both employees and customers safe.
It's kind of good to know that I can go into a store and not worry about catching anything.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, many businesses have been given the green light to open up. Many of them are struggling to pay their rent. As you saw on the National, the federal government is offering help through a forgivable loan program for landlords, but it won't be mandatory. And that has some wondering if it'll work. Lorenda Redekop explains.
Ginger Robertson and her husband own 2 Toronto restaurants. They finally reopened their pub last week, but just for takeout.
Edmund Burke is a pub. Everything here is based on experience. Takeout just doesn't cut it. And we're paying commercial rent with no money coming in.
She's frustrated with how the federal and provincial governments are responding to building owners.
To mandate us to close, but to ask landlords nicely to participate is a joke. Either you mandate them to do it or you simplify this process or put it in the hands of the tenants, which you will get 100% participation.
Paying rent on your space might be a problem right now. We hear that, so we're taking action.
Today, the Prime Minister announced details on the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. For businesses, they'd only have to pay 25% of their usual rent cost. For landlords, they'd receive that 25% plus another 50% in a forgivable loan from the government. They'd lose the final 25%.
If you're a landlord and you and your tenant are eligible, please apply.
The Premier had a more forceful tone, but also isn't requiring anything.
Don't push me. These big landlords want to take advantage of small little companies and people that are struggling. I'm going to come down on them like they've never seen before. Cooperate.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business isn't convinced this program will have much pickup.
You think about your dance studios, your gyms. These businesses are desperate for rent relief. And today's announcement isn't much comfort because for many of them, their landlords have already said they will not be applying.
Robertson says from what she's seen, landlords would have to give many financial details and may not want to. She doesn't know yet if her landlord will apply. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, turning to other news, two 15-year-old boys were seriously injured after a string of shootings last night, and that has youth workers scrambling to innovate during the COVID-19 lockdown. One worker says if they can't think up new ways to reach out to youth, their physical and mental health will be at stake. Ali Chiasson reports.
Always I hear shooting here, shooting that, you know. I was scared always.
A shooting outside a housing complex on Grand Ravine Drive marked the start of a violent night across the city.
Police arrived on scene with fire and paramedics and located a 15-year-old male who had sustained at least one gunshot wound, and located a second 15-year-old male who had also sustained at least one gunshot wound. That male was also transported to hospital and is also in serious but not life-threatening condition.
Police say it was a drive-by. Witnesses say there was no mistaking the gunshots for leftover Victoria Day fireworks.
It happens there so often, you kind of get conditioned to it. So fireworks kind of have more of an echo, gunshots don't. I mean, it's messed up. Like most of the people here are, people with families.
Before it was even midnight, there had been 3 different shootings in different corners of the city. That's not counting the 3 other calls for shots fired where there was no victim found, and a man who took himself to Sunnybrook with a gunshot wound. It's not clear which scene he was connected to. After last night's gun activity, we've now topped the number of shootings from this time last year by nearly 15%.
I don't know. I mean, we kind of call it, just summer in Toronto.
With 2 of last night's shooting victims being 15-year-old boys, youth workers call it a troubling trend.
It's the perfect storm for a spike in violence.
With community centers closed, after-school programs canceled, youth workers like Sean Morissette worry about reaching the young and at-risk, stuck at home with nothing to do.
You can't reach them on the phone because phone bills are being cut because parents can't afford to pay for the phone. If there's a spike in domestic abuse, there may be children witnessing the domestic abuse. When they leave the home, they're taking these behaviors with them potentially.
While they think of ways to innovate their youth programs and police appeal for witnesses.
I hope that there's somebody in the city or the government that's paying very close attention to these numbers and the spikes that we see and tie it back to all these other tentacles that we're seeing of behavior that come by way of being quarantined.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, many of us are in desperate need of a haircut. I know it's been 3 months for me, but we are still have ways to go before barbershops and salons get the green light to reopen. But that's not stopping some people. We'll speak to one black market barber after the break. Plus,
hey, did you like the weather today? Shall we do it all over again? I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. Another similar day on tap, and then some gentle changes coming our way as we get towards Friday and the weekend. I'll fill you in on all those details coming up after the break.
Time to check in the forecast with our meteorologist Colette Kennedy. And if you like today's weather, I'm sure we've got another day just like it tomorrow, Colette.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. You know, we just basically make a photocopy, and that's what's coming, at least with our forecast. We're going to repeat things. And what a beautiful day it was today, so I don't hear anyone complaining. A quiet night then ahead with these clear skies, and tomorrow we get another dose of vitamin D. Sun's very happy. You can see sunglasses. Yes, those are in order, but also it's a good time to remind you, I know even in the winter we need sunscreen, and even on cloudy days we can get sunburn. But what happens now is we're into a higher sun angle, and also more exposed skin as some of these layers are peeling off. So sunscreen definitely in order. And you know, by the time we get to Friday, we're going to see our temperatures actually rising a little bit, especially by the time we get to the second half of the weekend and into Monday, really. Then the humidity going up too. It's going to start to feel more summer-like and not just finally like spring as it did today with the high of 19 degrees. Oshawa at 20, a little cooler again for Hamilton, just 17, and that's also due to that lake breeze coming in. In fact, if you look at the contours being the colors here on our temperature map, see the green kind of going all around the Golden Horseshoe. Sure, close to the lakeshore, the temperatures are a little cooler, and the winds won't be as strong from the east, but primarily an easterly breeze again tomorrow, so still feeling a little bit on the cool side. I mentioned the quiet conditions tonight and into tomorrow. Now, this is at the end of the afternoon or getting close to it tomorrow. Starting into the evening to see a little bit of cloud cover trying to creep in there to southwestern Ontario and all along the north shore of Lake Erie. So then coming up towards the Niagara region as we go into Friday. So we'll see a few clouds coming back into our skies. Now, precipitation, it's trying to bubble up too, but this is becoming more of a summertime thing where we get some isolated showers by Sunday, Monday with some humidity, even some isolated thunderstorms possible. But it really looks like it's going to stay south of the border as we go through not only tomorrow, but Friday and into Saturday as well. So your temperatures tonight, these are your overnight lows for southwestern Ontario. Some beautiful daytime highs and some beautiful conditions for tomorrow afternoon. And tonight, 7 for you in Markham, 8 degrees in St. Catharines and many other locales. And then tomorrow afternoon, 19s all around, 20 in St. Catharines, and okay, maybe somewhere else. Maybe it'll be you, Oshawa. We'll pop up to 20 degrees again for tomorrow. But Friday, a little bit warmer. We get a little above seasonal, in fact, with a high of 22, Saturday 24, and then Sunday into Monday. Look at the temperature on Monday with some humidity. That's going to be feeling more like 30 degrees. It's been a long time coming, Mike, and a long time since we've had that, like a Humidex coming back into play.
Certainly a long time. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a train.
Well, the CFL is changing plans for this year's Grey Cup as it tries to salvage this year's season. Instead of going ahead with plans to host the game in Regina, it will now go to the qualifying team with the best record. It might even be played in December. The league is hoping to start a shortened season in September. It still plans, though, to hold next year's Grey Cup in Hamilton and be the first time it's been back to that city in 25 years. After months of lockdown, there are still all sorts of things people are longing to do, seeing families and friends in person, getting back to the gym, even getting a haircut. Well, now a visit to a barber or stylist still appears to be a few weeks away. But as Talia Ricci found out, a lot of people are already breaking social distancing rules.
I have no days off. Every day I'm booked from 10 a.m. to like 8 p.m. at nighttime.
This Toronto barber who goes by Apex the Barber says his pandemic schedule has been packed.
When I do the haircut, I wear my mask, I wear my gloves, I have all my sanitizing equipment.
He's not the only black market barber. This Brampton barber boasts he's most requested in quarantine. And this is how people are seeking out quarantine cuts on Instagram.
Toronto Public Health says it's investigated 124 complaints about barbershops and hair salons and issued 17 charges over the last couple of months. In Brampton, there's been 6 charges and many more warnings. Back in March, when the province ordered hair salons and barbershops to close, the requests for house calls started pouring in.
A whole bunch of my clients started calling and asking if I could please hook them up and give them a haircut that they're willing to pay any price.
How's $500 sound? That's how much Chris Hamill from Town Barber has been offered, but he says he's denied every request.
Sure, I could use $500 right now, as much as anybody else. It's a safety issue. It's a public health issue.
Hamill says the barbers who work at his shop have been inundated with requests too, but to them, it's not worth the risk. Hey, even basketball stars have to wait.
I'm done out here, bro.
We all need barber. It's okay. Well, anyway, you have nowhere to go anyway, so what do you need barber for?
Put a hat on. Wear a hood while you're talking to someone. Like, if you're that embarrassed and self-conscious about your hair, figure out a way to make it look acceptable, or just understand that everybody's in the same boat.
Since his interview with CBC Toronto, Apex the Barber has said he's putting a hold on giving haircuts. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Given a bag, you choose whatever you want. You fill it up with tacos, burritos, pickle, lemonade, cotton candy, popcorn. You fill it up with whatever you want.
Okay, I'm hungry. After the break, how this new food market is trying to open while still adhering to public health guidelines. We'll tell you about that after the break. If you miss going out for a quick bite and you live anywhere near Queen and Logan, well, this next story is for you. Toronto is getting its first social distance to-go food market. It's going to be packed with lots of takeout options, including margaritas and CNE-style favorites. It's opening this weekend. The El Mercado will be a way to treat yourself while staying safe.
People need a fish head taco and pickle lemonade right now. People need something to look forward to. People need something to talk about. We've owned a concessions company for the last 10 years, which travels to fairs and festivals across Canada and the United States. And once COVID hit, the season was completely canceled. So we were looking at what type of ventures we can do. And at the same time, Barrio was closed down as well. So we actually came together to create what is now El Mercado, something for the community here. A mask is required to enter the market. You're given a bag, you choose whatever you want, you fill it up with tacos, burritos, pickle, lemonade, cotton candy, popcorn, you fill it up with whatever you want, your essential produce, your alcohol to go. Everything is sold to go, and then what happens is you pay once via credit card on the way out. People still need something to look forward to by creating a safe experience where people can go and experience all their fun favorite festival foods, but in a safe way.
I've never heard anyone say they need a fish head taco. That's our newscast for tonight. Tomorrow on Metro Morning, we'll hear from 2 grade 12 students who are on the National Organizing Committee for a virtual prom. They're inviting every high school student in the country Friday night. It's a virtual event, as we said, taking place on YouTube to replace the hundreds of events canceled due to COVID-19. You can hear all about that tomorrow at 8:20 on CBC Radio 1. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.